Welcome to my American History Notes, where I discuss conclusions I've drawn from studying American history, conclusions you probably won't agree with. You might even be offended by, but it just means I hope you'll study American history, come to your own conclusions. And I hope you'll, if you're of a mind, that you'll subscribe to my channel. Um, Now, I'm talking about Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford had become vice president when Spiro Agnew resigned from that office under Nixon after accepting a conviction for income tax evasion and facing bribery charges in 1973. Ford became the 38th president of the United States after President Nixon resigned. Acknowledging he had not been elected by the people, he asked for their prayers. His VP would be Governor of New York, Nelson David Rockefeller, one of the world's wealthiest men. Ford would then went on to pardon President Nixon unconditionally and offered a conditional amnesty for thousands of young men who avoided the draft of the Vietnam War. He clearly was not going to be popular among either liberals or conservatives. It seems clear that President Ford's motives were an attempt to heal a broken country, just as Lincoln and Johnson had wanted to do after the Civil War, and his actions were despised by all parties just as much. He denied any private deal with Nixon. Calling the rampant inflation domestic enemy number one, he moved to raise taxes and other measures to hold down prices. In an attempt to whip up support for extreme measures, his public relations activity was called Win or Whip Inflation Now. He urged us to buy less and save more. With a massive drop off in large consumer purchases, inflation went down, but the economy was grinding to a halt. By 1975, this government intrusion into the marketplace had put the U.S. into full scale recession, heading for a depression. Millions of Americans were out of work. He proposed in 1976 a budget calling for the largest deficit spending in history to boost the economy. He also tried to start a program to make the U.S. independent of foreign oil. Things weren't getting better, though. Trying to shore up his popularity that was being hammered by his awful relationship with Congress and the American economic situation, he became the first president to visit Japan. He also finalized a treaty with Leonid Brezhnev of the Soviet Union over further reduction of nuclear weapons. However, as it became increasingly clear that Ford would not be elected again, the Soviet leadership stalled on negotiations. In spite of Ford requesting emergency funds to help the government of South Vietnam, that country fell to the communist North. The struggle that began in European colonialism in the 18th century, due to the ineptness and incompetence of French and American diplomacy and leadership, resulted in Vietnam descending into the murder and raping of the totalitarian communist state in 1975. When Cambodian communists seized an American freighter, the Mayaguez, he had the Marines free the ship, losing 41 dead and suffering the loss of all military installations in Thailand due to the Thai government's anger at having not been consulted. There was now no U.S. military presence on the Southeast Asian mainland. Betty Ford had not been, excuse me, Betty Ford had been an outspoken first lady with a mind of her own who campaigned for a controversial ERA or Equal Rights Amendment to guarantee equal rights for women, which many said went too far and was never ratified. But personal crises such as breast cancer and her later admission of dependence upon alcohol and drugs marked her life. Still, as an advocate of feminist issues and her Betty Ford Clinic to treat alcohol and drug addiction, she has remained famous and has been commended for her public role as a tireless humanitarian. So we're going to stop there and discuss some things about politics and religion in that era. We're talking about the middle 70s to middle 70s, right after Nixon's resignation and Ford before Carter was elected. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I hope that you'll continue to watch and come to your own conclusions about American history.